Hi, you've reached Call Your Publicist, your go-to source for PR moves, media moments, and brand strategies that keep businesses and people in the headlines for the right reasons. I'm one of your hosts, Jenna Guarneri, CEO and founder of JMG Public Relations.
And I'm your co-host, Alexandra Anastasio. Let's start talking. Welcome back. Today we're talking about how to get media without a big budget. So that DIY PR playbook, that's what we're going to be talking about today.
Awesome. I love this topic because do you know that in the US, so 20% of businesses first fail within the first year, and then 49% within the first 5 years. Those numbers are big.
That's scary if you are a small business or you're just starting out to hear that type of statistics.
100%. It's a scary process in general, and then you hear these statistics of failure, and it makes it worse, right? And then there's a number of reasons why a business would fail, right? Like financially, they're not set up properly. They don't have their marketing implemented. A lot of business owners, a mistake they make, and I often hear this, is that they don't have the brand awareness out there, right? They don't have customers coming through their door. They don't have the traffic on their website. But the reason is because they haven't implemented a strategy, a PR strategy ahead or as soon as they open, right? So you're excited because you're starting a business.
Right.
So you're like, oh, everyone's going to be so excited as much as I am. This is what everybody needs. It's going to solve so many problems.
Right.
But nobody knows that you exist yet.
Right. And there's so much more to it. And so I think a lot of startups, founders, small businesses say, okay, great, I have this great idea, right? Like you just said, now it's trying to get the word out there. And I think a lot of people think, okay, well now, how do I do that? I don't have that big budget. How am I going to get media attention? I can't bring on, the big PR firm, AKA JMG Public Relations, not a plug, but they're stranded, right? They don't know what to do. And so that's the purpose of what we're going to be talking about today, kind of debunking the myth that landing media coverage is only reserved for those big budgets. And that's really not the case.
Right. And I think where businesses and founders specifically can start out is figuring what the media landscape is like for their business, right? So it could be something small and local, which is fantastic, right? You have that niche. It could be something that's national where your product is sold online and anyone can purchase it, right?
Right.
So there's different strategies you want to explore. But say, for instance, if we're talking regionally, a small mom and pop, right? A pizzeria, a deli, a gift shop, whatever that may be. Boutique, right? There's so many different businesses out there. So say if that's what you're focused on, you want to pick out what those media outlets are that cover that area specifically. The local newspaper, the local TV stations, radio stations. There's so many, right? You want to create that target list, and you also want to understand the landscape there.
I was going to say, I think that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but these small businesses, you put so much into starting your business, right? Whatever that business may be. But now you have to think about that strategy.
Right.
And it's not just, I'm going to reach out, and maybe you might get a one-off if it's just calling your local paper or a local news station. But to really get media attention, you really have to put that strategy in place. Yeah. And I think you have to lay it out beforehand, just like anything else. When it comes to social, you're not going to just go rogue and start posting randomly. You need a strategy behind it. What is your, like we said, playbook?
Correct.
So,
and within that, there's so many nuances that will help you get to that media's placement, right? That story with the newspaper, the story with the TV station. You can't just say, hey, I'm open.
Right.
And then expect them to care because you care, right?
Right. Your door is open, but nobody's walking through.
Right. And that is understandable that you're excited about this. But you have to realize there's so much going on that what's exciting to you isn't exciting to someone else. So you have to figure out how can you help people understand your audience, your target audience, and then the media outlet's target audience. Why would they care?
Right. Why should they walk in your door?
Right. What does it mean to them? And then how do you tell the story in a way that will connect with them on an emotional level to take that action?
Right. So from a PR perspective, I know there are steps that you take when you are from our end of the table, when we're working with clients, how we pitch media.
Yeah.
So those are the same steps that these small businesses should be taking for themselves because they can't bring in the big PR people. So let's touch upon some of those steps and kind of walk people through how they can get started. What can they be doing?
So I think the first thing is you want to create your target list. Target list of media outlets specifically, right? It could be 5 to 10. You don't need 100. You just want to be strategic and have that focus. And then you want to add the extra layer of finding specific people at these media outlets by searching their stories. And the reporters who would be the ones writing about you, right? If I'm a boutique store, I'm not going to be pitching a sports reporter.
Right.
So it's got to be relevant.
Right. Do you suggest that they should be looking for outlets, media outlets, a variety of types? So when I say variety, meaning print, TV, podcasts, and other, like a wider variety. Don't just kind of say, oh, I only want to pitch TV because I want to be on TV. They should really spread it around.
You want a little bit of everything. You want diversity because you want to make sure you're hitting your target audience no matter what media outlet they are paying attention to, because now there's so many out there. It's not just, people aren't just sitting home watching TV. They might be in the car streaming a podcast.
Right.
They might be at their deli and they see the newspaper and they grab it real quick, right? Whatever that medium is for people, you want to make sure you get to them.
Right.
So you essentially have to go wide with your strategy, and then you will find your person along the way within that. So you need a little bit of everything. I call it a diverse portfolio.
Okay, makes sense.
Yeah.
I would say too, from the journalist standpoint, because I know being on the other end of the table, when you receive pitches as a journalist in your inbox, if you're getting these pitches and they have nothing to do with the beat. So when you hear, like you said, find those writers, reporters, TV, media outlets that focus on what you do, right? So as a journalist, you would want to know that that person has researched you and they understand what you do. So I think that's really important too, is to find the writers or reporters that you want to work with, but make sure that they cover what your business is or what your brand is. Otherwise, or if you pitch them, they're probably not even going to open it. But if they do, maybe there's a chance they might know somebody in that field. But I would say, do your homework first.
Do your homework, because we hear this so often, and you've experienced this, right? There's nothing more annoying than someone just sends you an email and it has nothing to do with what you do or any relevancy, and you just automatically hit delete. But then it also loses credibility of the person sending it, because it's like,
they didn't take
what
the
were
time.
you thinking?
Right. And
what about this makes sense?
Exactly. And then it's like when you are on the reporter side and there's hundreds of emails coming a day, probably more than hundreds.
Some people get thousands.
And it's a lot to go through that.
Yeah.
So I guess if I see something and it was not what I covered, I probably would think to myself, you didn't do your homework, delete. I apologize.
Or there might be someone who responds back and says something.
Right. Or that's the other thing. They might respond back and say, do your homework.
Unsubscribe.
So, unsubscribe. But no, that's a good tip, that you really should focus in on your niche. And for anybody who is starting to do this, think about strategically those media outlets that you want to be in. Like you said, don't choose 10, start off 3 to 5 and write those down and really start researching who's writing, or if it's a podcast host or a TV reporter, who are the right people, and try and find out a little bit about them as well, so that when you email them, you can make that connection. Because we always talk about relationships. So if you email them with a little personalization, I mean, I'm thinking if somebody emails you and there's no personalization and you feel like, who is this? Do you want to connect with them?
No. It just feels like a cold email that they mass sent out.
Right.
And that's another thing. Never send out a mass email. One template and you just send it to 500 people. It reads that way.
Right.
It reads very cold and not authentic and not tailored to how you write. Because you, as a writer, write a certain way.
Right.
And you're looking for certain nuances, certain angles. And so a small business owner can take those nuances and say, hey, I saw this article you wrote. I think that's fascinating.
Yep.
You know what might be interesting is you might actually be interested in this, which is you briefly touched upon at the end of that article. You know, it shows you read their article, it shows you did the research, and now you're bringing something to them that would be valuable.
I totally agree with that. I also think too, and we recently had a conversation with an entertainment producer, it's the subject line.
Right.
That is what is going to be the first, I don't want to say point of contact, but when you open up your email, as on the journalist side, the reporter side, you're probably looking, I know for me, I'll look at the subject line first, because before I even open that email, I want to know, okay, what is this about? So if I can't really gauge what your email's about, I'm like, I don't know. But I think subject lines are really important, even if you say whatever the person's name is, like say it's me. Hey, Alexandra, and call me out in that. I think that's an important tip we learned.
Yeah.
So I think that's a good example. Do you have any other examples of good subject? Have you seen good ones that stand out for you?
Time it to something, because reporters are always looking for things that are happening tomorrow, happening next week, right? Because then it takes something that's evergreen and makes it and there's a sense of urgency that they need to cover it right now. Because if you have a boutique that's been open for 2 years, there's no time sensitivity to say that with the grand opening, it's opening next Tuesday, right? A reporter says next Tuesday, I need to get a story in about this grand opening,
right?
But if you've been open for 2 years, what's the time?
Right, there's no urgency.
There's no sense of urgency, so they can get to your story at any time,
right?
But by putting a timestamp to it, you're getting them to write about it a little bit sooner. So some of those things are, you can find a day, right? National Pizza Day. There's a specific day for that. So you put the date, National Pizza Day, I don't have that, October 2nd, in the subject line. And of course, it should be somewhat relative to that timing, not, in January. But having that is really helpful.
So it's funny, as you were saying, using the boutique example, if let's say they're opening in 2 weeks, in my mind, because I think this is how it's constantly always working, I'm thinking if I'm pitching somebody, my subject line is going to say your plans for Tuesday, whatever the date is, you need to be here on Tuesday, June 10th, June 15th, whatever. I don't even know the dates. I'm just randomly throwing numbers out. But and if I'm the writer or the journalist, I'm going to say to myself, why do I got to be there on this day? What's so important on that day?
I got to know.
Right. So you have to hook them. And then once I hook them, now they're opening up my email, but you really need to be concise in that email.
Oh yeah, you don't need. We're not writing paragraphs here. We're not writing an essay.
You will lose me immediately.
I don't want to read that. No, you got to keep it easy, efficient, effective, compelling.
Yep.
Right. So it's top line, but it has to be really specific information and insightful, which is very hard for people to do. Because they get excited and they're like, but they need to know this. They need to know that. That doesn't make the full story. We don't need the full story because the reporter will follow up.
And they'll get all of that once they start doing the digging.
Correct.
I think the most important thing in that email right off the bat, once you hook them with that subject line, they're opening it up. You want them to know who you are, why they should care about you, why they should show up at your opening, or why they should cover your product or whatever it is. And why is it relevant to the audience, right? If just because you have something good or you have a new business opening, great. Why does the audience care?
Right.
Because I think that's what the reporter's going to be looking
and
at.
You have to also realize you have your target audience as a business, but then the media person has their target audience. And so you have to tailor your angle, your pitch to that target audience of the media outlet, because the reporter is looking out for their people.
Right.
And
so why are you the right person, you mean? To kind of tell that story?
No, how are you telling your story to those people?
I gotcha. Okay. Makes sense.
Yep. And I love what you said. So those 5 W's, the who, what, when, where, why, right? We touch upon that in You Need PR a bit. And we also compare it to the pitch for a PR pitch is similar to that of a sales pitch. Because you're selling them, a media person, on your story and who you are and creating a compelling narrative.
Right. Why do they want to invest in you, or when I say invest their time and their airtime for you.
Right. You got to sell them and make them believe and invest their time and resources in you. So just the way you put your energy towards a sales pitch, same thing with the PR pitch. It's not just a simple email.
And you know what's really interesting about that with those 5 W's? When you're on the reporter side, whether it's writing the story, telling it, you're thinking of those as well, because you're thinking, who is this person? How am I conveying them? What is their importance? So you're taking what they're telling you and you're really just reformulating that for your audience. I think too, a lot of times, which I see when I get a pitch from somebody, they don't really know who I am in terms of it's not personalized. And like you just said before, if I've written something, if I've done something, if you can, call it out. Oh, I recently saw this, or I recently saw that. So for instance, if I'm pitching you, right, I'm now on the flip side, and I want you to cover me, I'm going to say, oh, I recently saw you on Good Morning America, or I recently saw you on this podcast, so that you as a person know, oh, they really know who I am. I think it's all about that relationship building.
Mm-hmm.
And we get so many reporters, writers, journalists, they get so many pitches. So if they can feel a connection, they want to talk to you.
Correct.
Because flattery is everything, right? So it's like, oh, somebody read what I wrote, or somebody saw me on that podcast, and you want to talk to that person, because chances are I might ask you, well, what'd you think of it? So it's that all about that connection. So I think that when you sit down to write that email, make sure you know a little something about the person. It doesn't even have to be a big nugget, just a little nugget.
And I love what you said, that because PR is about relationships.
Right.
And I always have an issue with this phrase because people don't fully understand what that means. And they just assume that you should have friends everywhere in the media world because they're the ones that write stories about you. But that's not always the case, because I think you can get a story without being friends with people. But where the relationships is everything is building that from the beginning, from the start, by showing them you care about them as people. That can be, you can create those relationships at any time with anyone by creating that humanized connection.
I completely agree. I think people don't, I don't want to say they don't take that seriously. They probably do, but do they implement it each time?
Correct.
Because I think it's an extra step.
Oh, it is. It's extra work. And that also is, there's this extra layer of research and monitoring that helps with that and bridge that gap of that potentially cold email and to really warm it up. So becoming familiar with who these people are, setting Google alerts, perhaps on key reporters, making sure you're getting their stories, also then setting up alerts. I want to know how my competitors are being talked about.
Yeah.
Who's covering my competitors, because they should be covering me too.
Right. So if you see an article that was written about a competitor, see who is that writer, reporter. That's who you want to also be.
You can do a competitor analysis where you just search your competitor's name in Google, pull out any article that references them, and then also pull out the reporters' names.
Yeah, that's another great idea for research. So when it comes to pitching, I'll say, right, the do's and don'ts. So just to go through the do's, what should they be doing?
So create a pitch that's efficient and compelling.
Okay.
Don't mass pitch.
Gotcha.
Follow reporters on social media. So do create a relationship.
Okay.
Don't send a cold pitch.
Okay.
And do, what else is there? Humanize the connection.
Yes.
Same thing.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to say, proofread that pitch
or
that email, because the worst is if you spell somebody's name wrong, immediately I know if my name was spelled wrong, you're going right in the trash. Sorry. And I would hope that people would, because that to me says you didn't take the time to look at my name.
You were going so quickly. You that is mass pitching.
Right. That's mass pitching. And just do a quick, now, everything is spell check. So I don't think, if you have misspellings in there, I don't even know what kind of computer you have.
There's people that also say the wrong name entirely because they looked at the wrong line on the Excel sheet and pulled the person after, which is also a clear sign of mass pitching.
Yes. So take those do's and don'ts, write them down, and just remember them every time. I know it sounds like a lot, but I feel like those extra steps is what is going to get you, maybe not in the door, but it's going to get you a conversation.
Oh, I think that's in the door.
Yeah,
I think so. Yeah, okay, absolutely.
Okay.
And then let's talk a little bit more about the research and monitoring, how people can do that.
Yes, because you were just talking about Google Alerts.
Right, and there's other platforms that can help in the PR process that are affordable, that are sometimes even no costs added, that people can use to help build out their branding or assets for PR pitching.
Okay.
Right, like we even use Canva to design some graphics.
Yep.
Right, for our press kits. It's a fantastic resource.
And I think when you do your research and you implement the tools that can help you, right? Because we know research in any aspect is very time consuming.
Mm-hmm.
So as you're trying to run a business, which obviously, as an entrepreneur, running your business and doing all of the things, right, that go into running a business, it takes a long time. So when you can set up those research tools to help you, granted, you still have to do the work, but it's giving you back a little time, right? So if you set up in a Google alert, like you were saying, you can search for your competitors. What are they saying? You can search for yourself or whatever your product or your business focuses on. And that allows you to see, are there a lot of articles about that? Maybe people are already talking about something you do. And so you say to yourself, okay, well, they're already talking about X. I have to present a different way to talk about it because I don't want my story to sound like everybody else's story.
And that's a key thing to pull out from this as well, is that you have to find something that has a way to tell your story that hasn't been told before. Right. And sometimes I always like to add in a third element, I call it.
Okay.
Right. There's this other component. Perhaps it's like a give back, like you're doing a charity. You're doing a giveaway, right? There's something that, some sort of action. Okay. I don't know what's the action item. It's just this third element that helps create this fuller, meaty story.
Yes, it's a little juicier.
It's juicier.
It's a little juicier than the other people's story. It's like getting a small little hamburger and a bacon.
Yeah, exactly. So you got to fluff up the story a little bit and add more to it, so that way the reporter sees there's something here to be covered. It's not one-dimensional. It's multi-layered.
Right. So I know for us, when we work with clients, one of the first things I ask them in the beginning is, for keywords. And then I have Google alerts for all clients, multiple keywords. I mean, my inbox is overflowing with articles.
Yeah.
But it helps because I can weed out what maybe is not relevant, but then I can also see, these are articles that are being talked about in this person's industry. And have we been talking about that? Again, from the social side, on the content side that we do, then it allows me to create content because that's what the conversation is. So then in terms of finding the journalist, you can also think about it from the social side if you're also creating your own social content, which that's a whole other beast, in terms of, trying to get your brand out there. But right now you're just focusing on trying to be your own publicist right now. So my suggestion is for anybody out there is think about 2 to 3 keywords that are really important to you. And not that other keywords aren't, but your inbox will be overflowing. So think of 2 to 3 keywords, set up those Google alerts and see what starts to come in. Start filtering. You may find that those keywords aren't even, I don't want to say not relevant, but not bringing in the information that you need. Maybe then you have to tweak it. And also when you read the articles or scan them, because you don't have time to read all the articles, what you should also do is look at the reporter, click on their name, start reading the other articles that they've written, right? Because that is doing your homework.
100%. And then start tracking and finding the analytics within all of this that you're pulling together. Because as entrepreneurs they can be very analytical. They love their spreadsheets. They love data. So start to create these spreadsheets, trying to figure out or get in the mindset of these reporters. You could follow you'll figure out the trends. You'll figure out perhaps what they will be covering. If they covered this, they're going to be covering that. So you can get ahead of things, right? And then it starts to make a little bit more sense to you. So then you can strategize properly based off of this data you collected.
That was going to be my next question, because here I'm telling people, create those Google alerts. Look at those reporters. But once you have that, if you're just writing things down on a sticky note, you're going to have notes everywhere. So
I'm so overwhelmed.
Exactly. So do you suggest, are there any tools like CRM tools or any types of even if you're creating like a Google sheet, what do you think works? Because obviously you've been doing this for so long.
Right. So it really is, for me, it's really up to the person, because I am a very visual person. So I need things laid out in a very specific way. Otherwise I will not do it. Okay. So I think it's important that whatever works for the person, if it's creating a huge whiteboard on your wall, great, just keep it organized. If it's Excel, great. If you need a CRM like a HubSpot, do the CRM. Okay. Whatever the format is that will help you continue the process, I think that's important, because there's so many nuances with being a small business owner. So if you don't create that SOP, the standard operating procedure, you're not going to continue with it. Right. Make it simple, make it work within your normal workflow, and make sure you're scheduling the time to get to it. Even if it's 20 minutes a day, by the end of the week, that's a lot of extra time that you weren't implementing before.
And you just said something that I think is really important when you talked about creating a whiteboard, and then before you mentioned Canva, right? So you can, I would think, if let's say you're more of a visual person, I got spreadsheets everywhere. Then I can't find them. So that's another whole issue. But if you are a visual person and you want to create a whiteboard, and let's say you're using Canva, you can create it that way as well. That will also help you with your design skills, right? So you're kind of killing two birds with one stone. You're creating your whiteboard, you're getting that visual experience, that creative experience in creating that whiteboard. And that's something you should be using anyway, a design platform. And Canva, there's free plans. You don't always have to, pay for it if in the beginning, because I'm sure with a small business, your funds are, limited in terms of what you can spend extra. So start looking for things too that have those free memberships, trial memberships, or, that you can test out before you actually spend the money on them.
So I think there's a lot of good resources and a lot of good tips to start with. And it's really what we're trying to do here is make it really digestible so that when you start the process. Because there's so many layers and nuances as the businesses get more complex, as you grow, so does the PR strategy. Right. So it's good just to kind of build that foundation. And that's what we want to help you guys with today. So I think we've covered a lot with this.
Yep.
And I think there's still so much more to uncover.
Yeah, there's definitely more to the strategy than the two. I don't want to say two tips because I feel like we gave more than. Yeah. I mean, it's two strategies so far. Two topics within the strategies with a lot of information that hopefully you wrote down.
But I would love if we can circle back on this.
Yep.
Provide more. Let's go to the next step of the process.
Okay.
And let's build this out a little more for everyone. So I think let's stay tuned and let's give some more tips.
Sounds good.